League winners are the players that you draft that far exceed their ADP expectations and are quite literally the reason why you win your fantasy league. So today, John and I are looking at a few players at the quarterback position who could do just that. And all of them are actually coming off the board outside of the top 8 at the position. So John, I'm going to throw it to you first to talk about your first quarterback league winner option for the 2026 season.
Yeah, quarterback is deep. This was kind of a tough list to get together, but I keep going back to Brock Purdy. He's the 100th pick, in our multi-site ADP, QB 13 off the board. I love getting guys in this range because everybody else in your draft has their quarterback already. So 11 are gone. You're probably going to get, Purdy's probably going to be on the board. You don't have to necessarily pull the trigger right away as the 12th. So you can wait another round or two because people aren't really going to, unless they're a bunch of donkeys, they're not going to take their second quarterback right away, unless they're trying to go kind of a QBBC type format or something. But you can get them a little later in actual drafts if you wanted to. Just super productive when he's been healthy. And that's the one issue with him is, only played 8 games last year. So he finished QB 24, but he was the QB 2 on a per game basis at 21.5 points per game. He finished with 26.2, 30.9, 36.9 in his final 3 games, 96th percentile EPA per dropback, 98th percentile in CPOE among the 45 qualified passers that were in the sample. They added Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, although Christian Kirk's not available right now, but they re-signed Deebo Samuel to replace Ricky Pearsall. Stribling's coming on as a rookie. They should be getting George Kittle back by week 1. Christian McCaffrey, obviously, maybe the best receiving running back in the league. He's going off the board, like I said, QB 13. He really is a mid-range QB1 when he's playing. So I think he is the perfect guy if you want to anchor a committee, or if you just want to kind of just go late round quarterback and stream if you need to. I think if he stays healthy, he's got QB1 numbers written all over him.
He played 9 games last year and was a top 5 quarterback or top 12 quarterback 5 times, top 5 3 times, which is pretty tremendous. And a bunch of those were basically all the games that whenever he came back and from week 11 on. You mentioned, everything, like he's literally second in 2025 completion percentage over expectation. You mentioned the EPA per dropback, like all that other stuff. Brock Purdy is just a good quarterback. And a lot of people will be like, oh, system quarterback, whatever. But he's like a good quarterback in a tremendous system. And none of those variables are changing, at least not from a redraft 2026 lens. Mike Evans, Dazon Stribling, everybody like that. Like it is just such a good offense. And Purdy is just such a good quarterback that when you're talking about a player that you can get after, like you mentioned, everybody else has already taken a guy. Purdy, I think, is like number 1, unless you're really, really waiting and kicking the can down the road. But Purdy, I think, is just he's that guy in the 9th or 10th round when everybody's already gotten their quarterback already, and you can just grab him, and he could be, as I mentioned, a top 12 guy 60% of the time last year, top 5 a third of the time. If you're getting similar numbers to that this year, that is tremendous in the 9th round of ADP right now. Real quick before we jump back in, there are now 3 ways to get 4 for 4 for way less. Sign up at Rebet, a social sportsbook and casino where you deposit $10 with code 4 for 4 and you get our full picks package. All of our fantasy, DFS, and betting content, a $349 value for $10. That is 97% off. Prefer a prediction market like Kalshi? You can do the same on Novig and you get our base sub for $10. That is 75% off. Or just use code YouTube for 25% off any plan at checkout. Links and more details are at 4for4.com/plans, which is also linked down in the description. But speaking of waiting a little bit, kicking the can down the road, and so to speak, in terms of ADP, my first quarterback league winner is, of course, Tyler Shough. I feel like he has become the poster child for late round quarterback this year. But I think that it's well worth it based on what he did at the end of last season. He was literally on pace for 4,200 yards and 20 touchdowns over the course of the season whenever he actually started and took over for Spencer Rattler. Those numbers increase a little bit up to the point of 4,400 yards and still about 20 touchdowns if you remove that first week and just give him a mulligan for his first start against the LA Rams. So, and again, that was with Chris Olave, of course, with Juwan Johnson, but then Devon Bailey got hurt. Devin Neal got hurt after Alvin Kamara got hurt, so they were on Audric Estime as their RB3. They were, I think Mason Tipton was catching passes for a good majority of those games as well. And Tyler Shough won Rookie of the Month for the month of December based on all of that. We love his offense. We love the weapons in the offense. We love Kellen Moore and his offensive play calling style. Jordan Tyson, as much as I would love to have him right now for the start of week 1. It sounds like he's going to be probably a PUP candidate, miss probably 4 to 6 weeks in the season. But when he comes back, and if he's back and healthy for the majority of the season, that is only going to be good for Tyler Shough as well. I just think that based on everything that we've seen out of the New Orleans Saints camp and what he's already done in training camp, what he did last year, and then you've upgraded a lot of those weapons. I didn't even mention Travis Etienne Jr. coming in and being a pass catcher out of the backfield, plus Kamara whenever he comes back from injury. There's just so much upside and potential for a player like Tyler Shough that's like, we have one of these quarterbacks every year. Last year it ended up being Drake May. The year before that it was Jaden Daniels. Like, there is usually a guy in these double-digit rounds of fantasy drafts being taken outside the top 12 that can drastically outproduce ADP. And to me, this year, that is Tyler Shough to an absolute T. So I've drafted him basically every single redraft that I've already had as of right now, and I continue to plan on drafting him in the redrafts that I have as we lead up closer to the season over Labor Day and stuff.
It speaks to the depth at the position in fantasy that he is going QB 20 off the board, even though from week 9 to week 18 last year, he averaged 17.1 points per game. He was QB 9 in that stretch, QB 12 on a per game basis. So you have a rookie coming in and posting low end QB 1 numbers in his first, 8 or 9 starts. It's like, it wasn't even a sure thing that he was going to be a viable NFL starter heading into last year. I mean, I remember, some questions about that, and he proved everybody wrong on that front. 64th percentile in CPOE. EPA per dropback is 33rd percentile, so not as good. I did really get more bullish on him in terms of his upside with the Jordan Tyson draft pick. It is a bit worrisome because it just feels like if Tyson misses the first month or more, that his rookie season, I wouldn't say is in jeopardy, but it's just not as likely that he's going to be a star in the second half of the season. I think it's possible still to come back. I think we saw it with Odell Beckham as a rookie where he missed camp and everybody was kind of down on his rookie season and he just exploded onto the scene. So it's possible. But usually these injuries sort of either resurface or there's some issue. So that's my only concern is just sort of lack of weapons. If Tyson can't come back healthy, if anything were to happen to Chris Olave, they're really thin at the position, but he's going so late that you really can just in drafts this year, draft a couple guys in the 12th, 13th round, 11th, 12th round, and you have a backup plan or you have a committee and you have another player like with a lot of upside that I'm going to talk about, 2 of them, that you could just draft Tyler Shough and one of these 2 guys and you've got a couple, stokes in the fire. Like one of these guys could work out for you and they might both work out for you.
We didn't even mention either that Shough offers a little bit of a rushing floor as well. Like I'm looking at his game logs, like he had 7 for 22, 6 for 18, 7 for 55 and 2, 8 for 32, 3 for 34 and 1. 2 of the games that he didn't do all that well, he had, only 8 rushing yards and 6 rushing yards at the end of the year, but he threw for 300 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns in those same games as well. So he was getting it done through the air. And that's why he wasn't doing as much on the ground. I mean, he just found a way to get it done basically every single week last year. And his offense ideally probably got upgraded with Travis Etienne. And then also when you get Jordan Tyson back, Jordan Tyson, even a slightly injured or mostly injured Jordan Tyson is better than a lot of the wide receiver 2s that he had behind Chris Olave last year. And you still got Juwan Johnson. You got Oscar Delp. It's Tyler Shough for me, 100%. But I will also fully endorse specifically one of your next picks, but both of them for sure. And speaking of rushing, why don't we get into your second options here for quarterback league winners?
Yeah, it's interesting quarterback rankings and how the ADP is shaking up right now, because you've got Shough at 20, you've got Jordan Love at 19, Malik Willis at 21, Daniel Jones at 22. Daniel Jones posting QB1 numbers prior to the Achilles tear last year. So, like, I would not be shocked if any of these four guys finished with low-end QB1 numbers. And then the next guy is CJ Stroud, Sam Darnold, Cam Ward, Bryce Young, Fernando Mendoza. Okay, so, like, to me, there's this huge gap between healthy Daniel Jones at 22 and CJ Stroud at 23 with the loss of Jaden Higgins, right? And Sam Darnold, like, okay, like, he's going to be all right, but he's probably going to throw a lot of picks. And, I don't see him posting QB1 numbers, but maybe I'm wrong. But so what I'm getting at is in redraft, and it's a one quarterback, is that, and you're going to wait, you get two of these guys that are going, 16, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Jordan Love, Shough, Malik Willis, Daniel Jones, right? Maybe to get two of them, play the best matchup each week. I've got a QBBC article up with a tool in there that shows how their schedules match up so that you can draft a productive committee, and you're probably going to get low end to mid range or higher QB1 numbers out of the committee for a very inexpensive draft capital. So the two I wanted to talk about were Jordan Love. Okay, John's a Packer fan. Yep, John's a Packer fan, but Jordan Love's really good. QB 13 last year, QB 21 on a per game basis. Solid, but not great. He left 3 games early due to injury. When you remove those, he was kind of dinged up last year. When you remove those, his per game average 17.2 points. That's about QB 14 on a per game basis. But if you look at his advanced stats, they're just basically incredible. 98th percentile EPA per dropback, 96th percentile CPOE. Those are both near the top of the league. He's had a top 5 season in his career, fantasy wise. It's just all volume, and whether or not, number one, does the defense take a step back with Jeff Hafley, now the head coach in Miami? Number two, is Josh Jacobs as good as he was the last couple of years running the ball? Do they decide if Love can stay healthy, do they decide now they're really going to lean into the passing game with, Christian Watson emerging into a bona fide wide receiver 1, Jaden Reed, really good route runner, super efficient with his touches, and Matthew Golden, who I know you don't like, but you got Tucker Kraft at tight end, maybe a top 3 tight end when he's healthy. Do they lean into the passing game? Do they close games more aggressively? Because a lot of their issue over the last few years has been fourth quarter collapses, because they get a little too conservative in the fourth quarter, second half, and they're not trying to, put teams away. They're trying to do it, trying to grind out touchdowns on the ground, and it's not always effective. So what I'm getting at is if they lean into him in terms of his talent, and they increase the pass rate a bit more, then he's got QB1 numbers written all over him. And then the other guy, and I'm only supposed to pick one, but the other guy I want to mention is Malik Willis. And I know people have talked a lot about him. It's not like some shocker that he could be a fantasy star. The question is the receiver room. Malik Washington is there. Was it Caleb Johnson?
Douglas.
Caleb Johnson?
Caleb Douglas.
Sorry.
Caleb Johnson is the Steelers running back who's probably going to get cut.
Oh, yeah. He might get cut. My apologies.
Yeah.
And then Bell's coming back, right? And Greg Dulcich is a pretty good receiving tight end if he's healthy. The vibes I'm getting from this Malik Willis season, and he's not, like, the Dolphins are not going to be good. So there's going to be a lot of second half comeback attempts, or at least second half dropbacks. I'm getting Blake Bortles vibes from this. And Blake Bortles, if you remember, and I'm dating myself a bit, but he posted QB1 numbers, I think, a couple seasons. And I would tweet about him incessantly as the garbage time hero, because he goes into halftime and he's got, 6 fantasy points. And in the second half, he gets 14. He ends up with a QB one day. So I am getting serious Blake Bortles vibes from Malik Willis this year. And he might be the better passer, Malik Willis. I think he's actually improved a lot since his days in Tennessee. He was fantastic with the Packers in very small sample, but he can run like the wind. There's going to be lots of dropbacks where he's scrambling around. I don't know how, if he's going to stay healthy, but if he does, there's going to be some QB1 games for him, especially. And he played great for the Packers last year and then the year before when he had to fill in for Jordan Love. So I'm going to go with my two Packer guys, and I think they could both be league winners this year.
If you had not written down Malik Willis, I 100% would have. And I think there's two parts of Malik Willis that I think are really, really interesting. Number one is that his rushing production in his career has been phenomenal. He has averaged 45 rushing yards per game in the 6 starts that he has played in, which is a 17-game pace of 760 yards. He's actually rushed for 60 or more yards in more games that he's ran for fewer than 40 yards in those starts. Since 2005, there have been 21 quarterbacks who have rushed for at least 700 yards a game, which is roughly an average of 40 rushing yards per game. Only 2 of those 21 quarterbacks finished outside the top 12 in total fantasy points, and they were both Lamar Jackson injured seasons in 2022 and 2021. But he was still a top 15 quarterback in total fantasy points. But every single one of these quarterbacks averaged at least 18 fantasy points per game, which 18 fantasy points per game last year was Daniel Jones as a QB1, the QB12. And so if you've got Malik Willis running as much as he has in his 6 starts in Miami, that in and of itself is going to give you a floor of production every single week that any passing production would just be, the cherry on top for ultimate upside. Like, we were drafting Justin Fields the past couple of years knowing that he sucked as a quarterback throwing the ball, yet he would have these games where he'd rush for 60 to 80 yards and a touchdown, and he would just, if he just gives you 150 passing yards, you're like, that's a 20-point day in and of itself, let alone if he had 60 rushing yards, then threw for 202 on some random week. Then that would be incredible. But so we've got that inherent upside with Malik Willis running the ball and the floor. But then you also wonder, what if Malik Willis is like actually somewhat of a good passer as well? Like, you look at his 2025 stats, again, very limited sample size, but we talked about how great Brock Purdy was and everything. Well, Malik Willis was first last year in CPOE. He was first in EPA per dropback, first in success percentage, and then he was also first in completion percentage. And you might say, oh, well, some dink and dunk kind of little things. Nah, he was first in yards per attempt and first in average depth of target as well. 10.1 average depth of target, 12.1 yards per attempt. He was also second in passing touchdown percentage, and didn't throw an interception. So it's like, obviously the receiving weapons, I should say, for Miami are not good. But it's like, what if Malik Willis just is actually somewhat of a good quarterback and just slightly elevates the game of the receivers that they have there and is kind of competent as a passer while also giving you the mobile floor of, a lot of these other Russian quarterbacks that we've seen in the past. That's like, that to me is the recipe for how Malik Willis goes from being a really solid pick as a guy that you throw into your lineup more often than you think you would for a guy as a quarterback 20 off the board, but then could like legitimately be a potential like top 6 fantasy option this year if he is actually that good of a passer. So that's why I would have included Malik Willis had you not. So I'm glad that you did, because I think he is a legitimate diamond in the rough that everybody is talking about, yes, but yet his ADP still is not moving because it's Malik Willis on the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, when you said you could get behind one of the guys I was going to mention, I thought it was going to be Jordan Love. So I'm surprised with the endorsement of Malik Willis. I think the issue, you could look at his stats, and they're pretty incredible from his days in Green Bay. But in Green Bay, 79% completion, 10.9 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and then obviously he ran a lot. If you include his Tennessee stint, he's got a career 8.5 yards per attempt, a career 67.7% completion rate, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Obviously his Tennessee days weren't great. He averaged 4.5 yards per attempt as a rookie. But like his stint in Green Bay really helped. And I think Matt LaFleur, one just side note, he really got into his bag whenever Willis was like, he had a Malik Willis package ready to go. And from a play caller standpoint, he just looked like he was on fire anytime Malik Willis was playing back there. And then Willis was such a threat to run that it's just the fantasy points and the Packer offense in general was just moving. And nobody was ready for it. So they'll be ready for it now. But I think there's going to be enough catch up garbage time in the third and fourth quarter that even if he's not a good passer or he kind of regresses to Tennessee days, there's going to be enough opportunity for him to throw and to run in the third and fourth quarter and score fantasy points that way.
The final league winner that I wanted to talk about, the most expensive guy on this whole entire list, but I still think is worth paying up for if you didn't want to wait until the 9th round for Purdy or, double-digit rounds for Shough, Love, and Willis, is Trevor Lawrence. And say what you want about how he ended the season last year, that it was fluky, it was touchdown-based or all that kind of stuff. Like, I kind of think that version of Trevor Lawrence that we saw to end last season is more of the version of what we're going to see moving forward in this Liam Cohen offense. And honestly, everybody talks about, well, look at his splits from, week 10 on, week 12 on, or whatever it is. You can look at his splits from week 5 on. From week 5 on, he was averaging 243 passing yards per game and also averaging 25 rushing yards per game while throwing upwards of 2 touchdowns per game as well. That's a 17-game pace from week 5 on of 4,100 yards, 31 passing touchdowns, over 400 rushing yards. And then, he ran hot on rushing touchdowns. He was on pace for 12. That's not going to happen again this year. But the passing numbers are there, and we know that he at least offers a solid enough rushing floor that, he's going to be giving you a little bit on the ground. And maybe if he has, 3, 4, 5 rushing touchdowns, that's still enough of a boost to give you a very, very good, top 8 fantasy quarterback. If not for the potential of more, if he just continues to throw, as well as he did last year and throw for mid 4,000 yards and mid 30 touchdowns, or maybe even 40 touchdowns. Maybe we get a Baker Mayfield type season out of him this year that we saw from Baker a couple years ago, because the receiving weapons, we just talked on the last video that I'm panicking on Brian Thomas Jr., but that's a completely Brian Thomas Jr. take. Like, BTJ still being there is good for Trevor Lawrence. Parker Washington's ascension, good for Trevor Lawrence. Jacoby Myers being the stable anchor wide receiver too, good for Trevor Lawrence. Any packages with Travis Hunter, good for Trevor Lawrence. Bashal Tutin and LaQuint Allen out of the backfield, good for Trevor Lawrence. Brenton Strange at tight end, good for Trevor Lawrence. Like, everybody said that if you just don't want to worry about the Jaguars, but you still want to capture that production, draft Trevor Lawrence. It's 100% true, and it's totally worth it. And the schedule is the only thing that really scares me a little bit, is for those first 6 or 7 weeks are horrendously difficult. But the second half schedule is when he gets, both of his Titans games. He gets some other really easy games in there. From a fantasy points allowed standpoint from last year, I believe that his second half schedule post bye week for him is the easiest among all quarterbacks based on last year's numbers. So take that with a grain of salt. But we're not expecting the Titans defense to be all that good, or some of those other teams that he's playing in that second half range. So if he's able to get through that first month and a half as a decent quarterback, kind of like what he did last year, but then rips off another second half, again, kind of like what he did last year, Trevor Lawrence, I think, could be a legitimate league winner again, just like he was for a lot of fantasy managers last year.
I'm just looking at hotspots because you mentioned his schedule. Cleveland, at Denver, New England, at Cincy, which is not bad, Philly and Houston before his bye. So it's rough. Yeah. But then afterwards, it's Indianapolis, Baltimore, Tennessee, Giants, Tennessee, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Houston, Dallas, and Washington. And week 16 and 17, Dallas and Washington, really good schedule. But I just noticed that Green Bay, if you wanted to pair, Lawrence, who's not that pricey in terms of his ADP, with Jordan Love, they both have bad matchups in week 1. Green Bay's got Minnesota, but then it's at Jets, Atlanta, at Tampa, Chicago, Dallas, Detroit. And that takes you all the way through Trevor Lawrence's bye in week 7. So you could really run Jordan Love out there for 6 straight weeks there, and then turn the tables over to, or hand the keys over to Trevor Lawrence, and you're going to get some, I would think, really good production out of your quarterback position.
So who would you start in week one? You mentioned that if you draft T-Law and Jordan Love, they both have really tough week.
Yeah, I mean,
so
you're starting your best start that week, just depending on what the rankings say, or whatever the projections say. But I mean, Minnesota 7.8 adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. Tough matchup for Jordan Love. Lawrence at home, at least, against Cleveland, who doesn't, their numbers aren't necessarily as bad after that trade. So
no Myles Garrett.
Yeah, Myles Garrett's gone. So I would probably start Trevor Lawrence at home against Cleveland, and then just hand the keys to Love for 6 weeks.
Malik Willis gets the Vegas Raiders week one.
Oh, there you go.
That
would work too. I mean, Willis has got Vegas, 49ers, Chiefs, Minnesota, Cincinnati. Then he's got a bye, and then he's got the Jets. So there's some. It doesn't match up quite as well as Love does, but pretty well.